gentlemen, we have called you together to inform you that we are going to overthrow the United States government. Do you still think that jet fuel brought down the World Trade Center? Does anybody else see a problem here? If the government has nothing to hide, why are they so afraid to answer a few questions? This story does not...
It's always a tough vote because the average person thinks raising the debt ceiling must mean that we're running up our debt. Raising the debt ceiling, which has been done over 100 times, does not increase our debt. It does not somehow promote profligacy. All it does is it says, you got to pay the bills that you've already racked up, Congress.
Just got paid today. Got me a pocket full of change.
You're listening to The Alex Jones Show.
Said I just got paid today.
Headline up on Infowars.com. It's a Darren McBreen special report from last night's Nightly News. Mr. Burns declares war. And if you're not watching us, you don't get the fact that Lord Rothschild is a spitting image of Mr. Burns from The Simpsons, who's always saying, Smithers. I'll never even really watch The Simpsons. My mom really likes them. When I do watch it, it's funny, but there's a lot of programming in there. Like men are idiots, men are morons. Every dad on a Fox show for 30 years since Married with Children is just a complete buffoon. That's all financed, just like the current Attorney General, back when he was Deputy Attorney General 20-something years ago, said, we got to literally brainwash the public. Well, these are the messages. And when you see every show where the father's a moron, and every show where gun owners are racist, and every show where women are the boss, you're seeing globalist conditioning. Meanwhile, a record number, 56,023,000 women are not in the labor force. And women in every major study are the biggest sex objects they've ever been. And most women say that they, in studies, are not happy with the way their lives are going. Well, that's because the government wrote the script for you, Cupcake. And men aren't happy as well, unless they're busy watching one of their favorite football shows. But I want to go to your phone calls, Jason, Matthew, Brian, Paul, Kevin, and others, on this whole move toward dictatorial power. Now it's just out in the open. It's not Alex Jones saying we're devolving and degenerating and rotting and sinking and collapsing and festering into a stinking heap of dictatorial swarminess with gaggles of sycophantic pumps becoming their own little local viceroys to oppress and dabble in control freak dreams. It's the establishment. We're technocrats now. Why? The EU appoints presidents and prime ministers now, and we'll do it in America, too. Ha, 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 ha. And Goldman Sachs will fund both Jeb Bush and Hillary. Or will you? We'll talk about the fall of Hillary Clinton coming up, but I do want to go to your phone calls. But since I mentioned what Alan Greenspan and Lord Rothschild are saying, I thought I'd play a brief report, a brief snippet from last night's InfoWars Nightly News, hosted by our anchor, Darren McBreen.
Now, speaking of arming our enemies, Lord Rothschild is warning investors that we are about to embark on the most dangerous geopolitical time since World War II. Well, he should know, after all, his family funded most every war since the Napoleonic Wars. Lord Jacob Rothschild, whose business associates include weasels like Warren Buffett and Henry Kissinger, well, he blamed the dangerous climate on chaos and extremism in the Middle East, Russian aggression and expansion, and a weakened Europe threatened by horrendous unemployment. So that is a very scary thought coming from this guy. And if you're not familiar with the history of the Rothschild family, I suggest you look into it. I mean, these guys are worth a lot of money. The Rothschild family is worth $500 trillion. And they own nearly every central bank in the world. They've financed both sides of basically every war since Napoleon. The Rothschilds, they own your news, the media, your oil, and your government. Most of you don't even know who this evil bastard is. And I also found out something else very disturbing about Lord Rothschild. He looks like Mr. Burns from The Simpsons. I mean, the resemblance is obvious. The only difference is Mr. Burns is about as harmless as a Boy Scout or Mother Teresa in comparison. What a douche.
Smithers, let's start World War III.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. The InfoWars Nightly News will return right after this. When we come back, we have two very powerful reports, one from Leanne McAdoo, the other from John Bound. And I'm going to sit down and talk to a biblical scholar. We're going to talk about the emergence of implantable microchips. Is the mark of the beast coming up? That's coming up next on the InfoWars Nightly News.
I don't think it's coming up. I think it's pretty much arrived. That's what his report shows. That's all at prisonplanet.tv and Infowars.com/show to find all those details.
You see, there are two kinds of law. This is a subject I love. I've been talking about this for years. There are two kinds of law on the earth that rule the whole world, but most people don't know that. All over the world, all governments are ruled by what is called civil law. Civil law goes back to a Latin word, civili, which goes back to the word illy. Oh God, I mean, you go on for hours on this stuff. Civil law, which is called in all countries the law of the land. So you'll say, well, you can't do that because that's against the law of the land. The law of the land is civil law, Roman civil law, the law of the land. But there is a second law which also operates all over the earth identical. It's called UCC, Uniform Commercial Code. That is the law of God in the world of business. I don't care if you're in Japan, in Africa, in China, in Istanbul, Turkey. If you have a company, if you have a corporation, if you are doing business where you buy and sell and make money, you are operating on this earth under something called UCC, Uniform Commercial Code. Because if all countries worked on a different commercial code, then nobody could do business with anybody. You couldn't trust Japan to pay you. Japan couldn't trust America to pay them for the cars, because everybody has their own laws. Under the Caesars of Rome, they established under Caesar that all nations in the empire that do business, everybody plays on a level field. If you do business in Africa with China, you pay them. And if Africa does business with American companies, you pay them. You pay whatever it is you're doing business. You don't mess around. The most severe law in this world is called UCC, Uniform Commercial Code. It's the Bible of business on the earth. Uniform Commercial Code. Uniform Commercial Code is based directly on Vatican canon law, on the Roman canon law. Consequently, when a ship pulls into port, it pulls in and stops, and it's called in its berth. The ship is now in its berth. Because it is on the law of the high seas, or commercial maritime, UCC commercial law, rules the seas. So when the ship pulls into its berth, the first thing the captain must do is to present a certificate of manifest to the port authorities, which means that the port authorities need to know how much is on this ship that you're bringing into our country and our economy. How many TVs, how many cars, whatever you're bringing, how much are you bringing into our economy. So you have to have a certificate of manifest of what is the value of your ship here. What are you doing? Consequently, when you are born, you come out of your mother's water. Therefore, you must have a birth certificate, a certificate of manifest, because you are a corporation-owned item. You are a human resource. This goes back to the German Nazi concept that every human coming out of their mother's water must be birthed. And therefore you have to have a certificate, a manifest, to see how much this individual is going to make for us in our new world order. I'm telling you that until you understand the laws, the symbols, the emblems, what these words mean, you're never going to suspect how far gone we really are. Did you know, for instance, that your birth certificate is a security on the stock exchange in the New York stock market? Did you know that? Because if you order your birth certificate, get a new one, order your birth certificate, it'll only cost you, sometimes it's free, it'll only cost you a few dollars. Order your birth certificate. On your birth certificate, all birth certificates in this country, on the bottom, it will tell you this is printed on security papers. Do not accept if not on full color security paper. Then on the right-hand corner, you will always have a series of numbers, red numbers, printed on the birth certificate. Those numbers are a security stock exchange number on the World Stock Exchange. You go to any good stock office and ask them, check these numbers in your computer and see how much your stock is worth, the certificate. And they will check it on the New York Stock Exchange and find your birth certificate is a stock on the stock exchange in America. Why? Because you are worth money to the international bank that bought you in 1930. We need to wake up. This is serious stuff.
Mr. Rothschild, how you doing, sir? Can you tell us what went on at the Bilderberg meeting this year?
Sorry?
Could you tell us what went on at the Bilderberg meeting this year?
I didn't get that, actually, no.
The Bilderberg? You weren't there?
No.
Not this year. What went on last year?
No, I wasn't there last year. I think that was my cousin.
Your cousin was there?
Yeah, I think so. Okay. Good night.
Do you have a couple minutes for us, Mr. Rothschild? We had a few additional questions. I was asking a question inside of, because I was saying that the Federal Reserve is one of these organizations. I know, it's one of these organizations that a lot of people say is the source of inhumane thoughts all across the world because it's a private bank. That was started by your family.
No, it's completely untrue. I was asked that earlier. It really isn't true. No.
Jekyll Island? Jekyll Island, 1913, sir? I mean, but sir, just one thing, we could go on about how your family committed all these acts against society, but we just want to let you know the New World Order has no legitimacy, and that we as a people are not afraid, and we are waking up to the robber barons and the big banksters who are looting this economy with the Federal Reserve.
Well,
we just want to let you know the New World Order has no legitimacy. And that we as a people are not afraid, and we are waking up to the robber barons and the big banksters who are looting this economy with the Federal Reserve.
Well,
what do you, I mean, the Rothschilds family did start the Federal, they divided Europe first, took over Europe, Napoleon.
Don't exaggerate.
Now, I will reveal who the real puppets are. Glenn Beck, don't trust him because of things like this. Here it is today, glennbeck.com. George Soros exposed on the progressive puppet master. The progressives. I've heard Rick Perry, there was video of him in the San Antonio Express News and quotes 2 days ago, going, it's the progressives of the 1920s. A bunch of beatniks, a bunch of liberals, a bunch of commies, Bertrand Russell. Yeah, we've talked about all them. We've talked about George Bernard Shaw years ago. They're in my films. But they're just left-wing acolytes pushing this. What about the Trotskyites becoming the neocons, Glenn? Let me tell you who's at the top of the pyramid. And I want to do a whole presentation on this. I've done it before, but I want to do in the next few weeks, who the true puppet masters are and really create a pyramid graphic that shows the different blocks. And they compete with each other at the top. But more powerful than the little low-level communists, because the globalists have to control the full field. They've got to have fake right-wingers and fake left-wingers. They've got to try to infiltrate the libertarians. They've got to try to gauge and control all opposition. But at the very top of the pyramid is the private Federal Reserve that is part of this global banking cartel, the 6 major banks that can issue unlimited currency and credit. That's who our forefathers from Andrew Jackson back to George Washington were fighting. Read their writings. This is nothing new. Same old fight we've had for 235 years. Same people that run the third world countries into the ground. Give them $1 billion loan, they end up paying back $50 billion, they owe another $50 billion. It's a total scam. This is what we're going into. This is what Ireland's going into with their interest rates going up on their national debt. George Soros in the pyramid is not even up near the capstone. He's a globalist, he's an operative, but above him is Henry Kissinger, Zbigniew Brzezinski, George Shultz, the Bush family, the Clintons. They are just management team front people, though. So you've got the pyramid. In fact, just give me a document cam shot. I'll just draw a crude drawing of this, okay? Here's the pyramid, okay? Not even a good pyramid. Okay, here it is over here. How's that? Here's the pyramid, okay? And up at the very top of the pyramid, you've got the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the Saxe-Coburg-Gothas. That's the British royal family. The Dutch royal family, also Saxe-Coburg-Gothas. You've got the Oppenheimers. You've got the Brothmans. There's less than 100 families at the top who are the robber barons. The Astors, all of them. They're all intermarried. When you study these groups, right here at the top, they are all intermarried. Just like even at the lower levels, the Bushes are all intermarried with the Clintons and the Cheneys and the Kerrys. Now, way down here in a lower strata, you've got Henry Kissinger, you got George Soros, you got Zbigniew Brzezinski, you got George Shultz, you got the Bush family, you got the Clintons, and they are social climbers. Notice that the Clinton daughter, Chelsea, married into one of the big mega banking house families. She married into Goldman Sachs, because up here you've got all these families. But right up here at the top is the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the British royal family, and they're all intermarried now. That's how the Rothschilds are lords. They're all right up here at the top. And they will go into other countries and team up with the Lee family that's run China for hundreds of years, with the Mitsubishis, with the Hondas, with others. And so up here, you've got all these elites, and the British Empire was the model for covert control. That's who the puppet masters are. That's who controls the strings into the nation states and the petty regional elites. And all these petty regional elites, they get invited to CFR meetings, Trilateral Commission meetings up here in the next to the highest strata. They get invited up here to feel like they're all powerful and they're special. And so as this ruling elite at the very top set up their world government, set up their Agenda 21, set up their world rules, set up their world armies, set up through IMF and World Bank control of the nations, all their domestic police states that are over every country, they also bought up the media now to 6 big mega companies other than alternative press, and they're getting scared trying to start beating the drum to shut down alternative media because we're exposing the real pyramidal structure. So George Soros is in the bottom layer of the next highest level to the capstone. You got the capstone with the royalty, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the less than 100 top families, the Astors, the rest of them, the Bundys, the DuPonts, they're all up here. And the DuPonts are at the very bottom of the top capstone. As you go up here, it's Rothschilds, Rockefellers, British royalty at the very tip. It's all compartmentalized. You look at Bohemian Grove. It's a pyramidal structure with 114 camps in it. And Mandalay, the most elite camp, has the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers in it. Below that, then they have camps with the Kissingers and the rest of them. And I mean, and then people who are just CEOs of billion-dollar companies, they've got to sleep on cots. They don't get lavish, log cabins with servants, but they're happy because they get to talk to these guys. And then these guys on top, they get to then influence peddle and compromise all these guys, the same model they use with nations and countries and corporations. And let's say somebody comes up with a corporation, makes a bunch of money, a few $1 billion, They just come in and buy them off, or if they can't buy them off, they kill them. So that's the real puppet masters, not George Soros, who in the pyramid is way down here at the bottom of the second level strata from the top. He's in the servant class. I'll come back and cover more of this. Glenn Beck, you're welcome to use this, okay? I dare you to talk about the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, the Queen of England. I dare you to do it, buddy. Okay, there it is. Real simple. Took about 4 minutes. There's the real pyramid of power. There's the real puppet masters. In my film Endgame, we show this same pyramidal structure, but with a fancy graphic. But I think we're going to go into even more detail in the weeks to come. George Soros has been convicted in foreign countries. He's a globalist, but he's kind of a black sheep, so that's why he's allowed to be scapegoated, and he's certainly a horrible creature. But I went over this power structure, this pyramid, but let me show you a photo of Arnold Schwarzenegger as he was running for governor at the palace of Lord Rothschild in England. And so there on one side, you see Lord Rothschild with the two puppets. You've got, of course, the owner of Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett there, who's a high-level puppet, but not in the top capstone. You've got Schwarzenegger, one of the minions that they were grooming. Okay, so there you see Lord Rothschild on the right-hand side of your TV screen with two of his minions. That's the pyramidal structure from top down. That's a microcosm. Let's go to another photo. And we'll continue to show you globalist here, people that are at the top of the capstone. There's the Queen of England. You know, they have all this media about how she has no power and all this. The lady owns much of BP, much of Dutch Roll Shell. She's cousins with Queen Beatrix. She owns weapons manufacturers, you name it, just untold wealth. She makes Bill Gates look like a pauper. Sachs, Coburg, Gotha, they give you a brand name because 200 years ago, the British didn't like having German royalty ruling them, so they changed their name to the House of Windsor. Okay, let's go to another photograph. So that's top of the capstone. There's Queen Beatrix, probably as wealthy, but it's a state secret in the Netherlands, probably as wealthy. Her cousin, Sachs, Coburg, Gotha as well. Her Nazi daddy, Prince Bernhard, top eugenicist, founded the World Wildlife Fund. Now, that's a top globalist at the top of the pyramid and the head person at the Bilderberg Group. Okay, let's continue looking at who actually runs things. There's David Rockefeller. He's been called the omnibudsman of the New World Order. He's written books admitting he wants world government and the end of U.S. sovereignty. Okay, that guy is in the upper reaches of the very top of the capstone. That's, the main Rothschild agent in the U.S. There's David Rockefeller right there. And they've intermarried with the Rothschilds and others. Now, at the next strata below them, at the super gopher imperial legate level, that's kind of the Darth Vader to the emperor, even more high-powered than Henry Kissinger or somebody like Soros. There's the Zbigniew Brzezinski. Okay, that's somebody beneath the highest capstone, but who the elites actually listen to when adjusting policy. So, in a way, he's got as much power as the top of the capstone because he's in there making decisions. Very powerful. In fact, he's almost a transition from the servant elite to the owner elite. He's almost in between because he makes so many decisions. Let's show you some more images here. I mean, we could show these to you all day long. And this is how they control society. And they had thrown the globalists down. 1832, the British set up Skull and Bones. Then they set up CIA out of that. Then they developed these families like the Tafts and the Bushes and others to be risen up throughout the power structure. So there's a smattering of, Paul Volcker and Ben Bernanke. They're minions. But if you look at number 3 there's one of the Rothschild family heirs. Number 3 on your screen is the father of David Rothschild. Next to him is David Rockefeller. This is what somebody's put up as their idea of the power structure. I don't know if I completely agree with that, that Lloyd Blankfein there and Ben Bernanke are even that high up on the food chain. Certainly a Kissinger or a Soros or a Volcker are making big decisions as economists for the globalist, or a Larry Summers, number 10, but no, they're certainly not that powerful on the scale. Two different separate animals, two separate groups. But again, I'll leave you with the pyramid drawing I did as we end this transmission. Coming up, I break down all of the incredible news. FEMA camps confirmed. Glenn Beck admitting that the government may stage terror attacks, and a lot more. See you back live tomorrow, 11 a.m. Great job, crew.